Thank you, Rabbi Meissner, for preparing the Torah for us on this Thursday night to share with Gulf Manor Synagogue. Please take it away.
Pleasure. It's actually going to be a long distance share. Actually, just today traveled to Detroit for Shabbos and honor my brother-in-law's offer of getting married next week. But makes it all the more special. Thank you. I'll have to join in from a farm. We're virtual anyway, so we can do this. So we have a double Parasha this week, Behar and Bechukotai. So we'll try to talk a little bit about both of them, maybe connect it to Sphira, and learn some lessons here. One major theme in this week's Parasha of Behar, right in the beginning of the Parasha as we start off, is the mitzvah of Shemitah. Shemitah, once every 7 years, the owner of his land has to just sit back, relax, not do anything, not tend to his field, let people come in, take his food, take food and produce, and that's it. He has to just let the land rest, recognizing that everything's up from Hashem. It's Hashem's field, and he's going to now sit back for a year. And that's all about bitachon. And this, again, even though Shemitah doesn't apply to us outside of Eretz Yisrael, but the lesson of bitachon applies to all of us fundamentally, and it's something that, applies every single day of our lives. I'll share with you something I read in Rabbi David Ashir's classic work, Living Emunah. Unbelievable book, highly recommended. He did not pay me to say this, but I'll share with you how the difference, he portrays the difference between someone who has bitachon, trust in Hashem, and someone who doesn't have. So take two people that both have to go on a far bus ride, 8-hour bus ride, and they have a meeting in a town far away, 8 hours away, and they both board the bus together. First person comes on the bus, and he takes a look at the driver, and he's nervous. He's like, does this guy know what he's doing? I hope he knows how to drive. We'll get there safely. And he sits down, and the trip begins, and the bus pulls out of the station, and it makes a right turn, and he's like, oh gosh, was he supposed to go right? Maybe he was supposed to go left. Is he doing the right thing? And the bus gets on the highway, and he's nervously looking around. Why did he take this road? There may be traffic. I hope we're going to get there in time. And the entire journey, he's sitting there fretting, worried, and anxious. What's going to be? Finally, 8 hours later, he gets off the bus with 15 minutes left to his meeting, all harried and stressed and bent out of shape, and walks into his meeting. The other fellow, also boarding the same bus, going to the same destination, steps on the bus, looks at the driver, says, this guy looks like he knows what he's doing. I'm sure we'll get there in good time. They pull out, make the right turn. It's like, I'm sure this is the way to go. And he sits back, he relaxes, he puts some earphones on, listens to some music, learns some Torah, enjoys the scenery outside the window. And 8 hours later, the bus arrives at the destination with 15 minutes to spare to the meeting. And he walks off all calm, relaxed, happy, ready for his meeting. Now, both these people paid the same fare and got to the same destination. But what's the difference between them? The difference is very simple. The first fellow didn't trust the driver. He didn't trust the driver. And he was nervous and anxious the whole time. The second fellow trusted the driver. And this is a powerful nimshah, it's a powerful parable to really everything in life. That we have to trust our driver, capital D. It's Hashem who's running everything. There's two ways we could go out throughout life. And Rabbi Victor Miller points this out many times. Two people could be going through the same motions, have the same type of job, and going through the daily motions. And the surface, on the outside, they seem to be very similar. But bitachon is really a mindset, tranquility, serenity. Do we trust the driver? Hashem knows what he's doing. We have to try to do our part. But everything that happens, all outcomes, all results to everything in life is ultimately only up to Hashem. And if we trust the driver, our life would be a more serene life. And as a matter of fact, the Chovas Halavavos, a classic Musar work, when he describes, he has a whole section devoted to bitachon. And in his first chapter, he describes what is a Baal bitachon, what is bitachon. And he explains that it's the menuchas hanefesh, the tranquility, the serenity of the one having bitachon. That's what it's all about. And let's pulling that back to Shemitah. I'll share with you a very interesting word from Rav Gedalia Shar. And we have to again understand, just try to picture ourselves in the mind of this farmer. that it's a daunting mitzvah, it's a daunting commandment. 6 years the farmer works and tends to his field. When Shemitah, can't plant, he's to sit back and watch. And in the words of the Tanchuma, the Medrash Tanchuma says, he sees his field ownerless, his trees ownerless, fences breached, he sees his fruit being eaten, and he subdues his evil inclination, and he's quiet. He's quiet, he doesn't say anything. It's very interesting. And the Medrash in Vayikra, in the beginning of Vayikra, quotes a pasuk in Tehillim that says, Giboirei koyach, these are men who are the strong warriors who do his bidding. And the Medrash explains in one interpretation that this is referring to those who keep the mitzvah of Shemitah. A very powerful thing. And why is that? And and again, the Medrash says this mitzvah doesn't just last for a day, a week, a month. This mitzvah lasts for a full year. Not easy. So Rav Gedalia Shor understands for the Medrash that the main theme of Shemitah here we see is bitachon, trusting Hashem, watching his ownerless field and keeping quiet. And he explains keeping quiet doesn't mean, remaining silent and sulking or feeling helpless. Gosh, this is what I have to do. No, the Medrash means someone who's silent with tranquility, perfectly calm with what's going on. That's who the Medrash calls a Gibar, a mighty one. Someone who's sitting there and angry and knows he can't do anything. That's not who the Medrash is calling a mighty one. We're talking about someone who's quiet and silent, realizing that this is a mitzvah from Hashem and we're not going to lose out by following his command. And that's what trust is all about. That's bitachon. And he'll get the blessing. He'll get that blessing of bounty that the Torah promises for those who follow Hashem's commandments. And the Medrash tells us as well that this pasuk, Giborei Korach, the strong warriors doing his bidding, applies to the Jewish people as a whole. That right before they accepted the Torah in Har Sinai, they said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will hear. And that takes tremendous gvura, that takes tremendous strength, that the Jewish people should accept the Torah and say that we're going to do it before they even know what it's all about. And he wants to connect it to that the very first words of the Parasha say, speak to the Jewish people, Dabra b'nei Yisrael v'amar aleim. Right? That's the second pasuk. The first pasuk says, Vayidabra Hashem Moshe Behar-Sinai lemor. This was told to Moshe at Har Sinai. And Rashi and the commentators wonder, what does this mitzvah have to do with Har Sinai in particular? All the mitzvahs were given from Sinai. Why this mitzvah? And based on what we're saying from the Medrash, we see the two have the same theme. They're both Giborei Koyach, those who follow the mitzvah of Shemitah and sit back, silent with tranquility with what's going on, trusting in Hashem. That takes a certain strength. And the same thing the Medrash says by those Jewish people as a whole accepted the Torah. It took a certain gvura. We're going to do whatever it takes. And that's the method. That's what's needed to accept the Torah as well in Har Sinai. That's why those two have a relationship with each other. And as Rav Gedalia Shor continues, and he says that this isn't a lesson just for the farmer. This is a lesson for all of us. And first of all, the farmer has to take this lesson past Shemitah. He gets that year where he gets infused with bitachon and trust in Hashem that everything's going to be okay. And he takes that lesson throughout the next 6 years when he is working and planting and tending to his field and eating. He's supposed to keep that bitachon strong with him and recognize that even in those years that he's working hard and it seems to be that he's doing everything, still it's all Hashem. He has to take that lesson. And a very, very important thing I saw in the name of Dessler as well. He addresses also a very common question the commentator asked. The pasuk later on says, if you're going to ask, what are we going to eat in the seventh year? Right? The Torah says, maybe somebody's going to ask, what are we going to do? What are we going to eat? And Hashem says, I'm going to command my blessing. On the 6th year. And we're going to make bounty for 3 years. And you're going to plant the 8th year, and you're going to still be eating from the 6 year's bounty until the 9th year, until the crops grow again in the 9th year. So Hashem's going to get an overabundance of crops in that 6th year to last you 3 years. And the question is, the pasuk prefaces with the words, if you ask, what's going to be in the 7th year? We're not planting, we're not gathering our grains. Everyone else has rights to it. What do you mean if we ask? Only then Hashem is going to give his blessing of bounty for 3 years? If anything, to the contrary, the people who don't ask, the people who have bitachon, the people who trust in Hashem should get this blessing. Only if we ask and say, Hashem, what's going to be? I'm not going to have food the 7th year. That's when he gives his blessing. Should be if you don't ask. And Rav Dessler says, and the answer is, that's true. A person who doesn't ask the question is on a much greater level. And you know what? He doesn't need this extra special blessing of 3 years worth of bounty. 1 year's worth of bounty, the 6th year of the 1 year's worth would have satiated him in a miraculous way through Shemitah until he plants again and is able to benefit from the new produce. He wouldn't need this blessing of 3. You ask the question, which shows there's a deficiency in faith and bitachon in Hashem. We're worried what's going to be. Hashem says, don't worry, you're not going to lose out. You're following my commandments. I'll take care of you. But on the other hand, this blessing that Hashem's going to give a bounty for 3 years is going to cause more exertion. You have to plant, you have to reap, you have to harvest. You're going to get bounty, a lot of it, but it's going to come with more exertion. If you wouldn't have asked the question, then you would have had 1 year's worth of produce lasting sufficient for 3 years. So again, it's everything. The lesson here sticks out tremendously. It's about bitachon, trust and faith in Hashem. Again, the more one has bitachon, the less questions he asks. Realizing if we put our trust in the driver, in Hashem, for everything, then we're going to merit the bounty. Hashem's going to take care of us. We're not going to need any extra stimulation. We'll be calm. We'll be serene. If we ask questions, right, then that shows that there's a deficiency of bitachon. Hashem is going to take care of us, though. We follow His commandments. He's going to take care of us, but it's not going to be the same. And this lesson is something, that not only applies to a farmer, not just during Shemitah and after Shemitah as well, but to us in our everyday lives. And we could gain tremendous levels. Things happen to us constantly, every day, and we have to know how to approach them. They say a story about a fellow who was on his way to work. He was on his way to the subway, and a car drove past in the street by a big puddle, splashed, drenched him completely. He's soaked from head to toe. He can't go to work like this. What's your initial gut reaction? I'm not going to say what I would do, what other people do. This fellow just calmly spun around, walked home, changed, and started heading back out to work. Wow, that's good practice of bitachon right there. To realize that everything's in control. Even things happen that I'm perhaps, don't go the way I want, that rub me the wrong way. It's okay. I'm trusting the driver. This is supposed to happen to me. And he goes through life tranquil, doesn't get angry, doesn't get upset. That's one lesson of Parasha and Behar-Bechukotai. And again, as we could see, everyone could think to themselves, situations and scenarios like this come up every day. Question is, how do we react? How calm are we? Do we get nervous when things come up? That's a good question that we should ask ourselves and turn to the Torah and get inspiration that we should make ourselves more calm and more trusting in Hashem and our driver. So one more idea now, Parasha Bechukotai. When the Torah tells us if we follow Hashem's will, things are going to be great, to get a lot of blessings. And if you don't, there's a whole list of terrible curses that are going to happen. And just as important, always, whenever I come to read the Tochacha, both in Parasha Bechukotai in this week's Parsha and in Kisavo, at the end, it's important to note, my Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Shimon Alstar, always mentions that let's approach this the right way. You shouldn't get turned off. This is scary. Hashem wants to punish us with terrible retributions if you don't follow the Torah. No. It's very simple. It's just cause and effect. It's cause and effect. Hashem created the world as cause and effect. If you follow the Torah, Hashem wants you to. He's willing to give you blessings. He's ready. But if we don't, we are causing this destruction upon ourselves. And if a person puts his hand in the fire, he's going to get burnt. It's terrible. Yeah, it's cause and effect. He caused it to himself, right? I think Rav Chatzkel Levenstein used to say that if a person buys an oven and he looks at the manual, and on the first few pages of the manual are big pictures with X's and warnings and dangers for potential cause of injury and death or whatever else it may be, right? Do you get angry? Is it terrible of the makers of this oven? No, they're just explaining the power of this machine that you're buying and the potential dangers. And it's up to you how to use it. And if the user misuses it, he's going to pay the consequences. Nobody else's fault. And the same thing with the Tochacha. Hashem wants us to succeed. But if we don't, this is cause and effect. This happens. Now, in the middle of this Tochacha here, there's one pasuk seemingly out of place, right in the middle. It says, "V'zacharti esprisi Yaakov, v'af esprisi Yitzchak, v'af esprisi Avram eskar v'aretz eskar." And I will remember my covenant with Yaakov, with Yitzchak, and with Avram, and the land I will remember. If I'm remembering it properly. And the question is, first of all, why are we listing our patriarchs, the Avos, out of order? Starting with Yaakov, then Yitzchak, than Avram. And also, this seems to be a consolation. We're in the middle of a list of all the terrible things that are going to befall the Jewish people if we don't act properly. And all of a sudden, there seems to be a verse of consolation in the middle. Says the Dubna Maggid, a fantastic parable to this. Dubna Maggid says there were two people who were brought to court for terrible crimes. They were caught stealing time after time, and they were brought to court. And the judge starts speaking to the first one and starts grilling him. Who are you? What's your family? Where are you from? Etc. And he gets some information from him. And then he starts talking to the second person. And he says, okay, well, the first fellow here, I know you. Your name is familiar. Your father, he was a frequent visitor in our courthouse here. He's a great thief. I see the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Second one, your father's a great man. Wow. And what happened was, when he came time to mete out the punishments, the first robber got off very easily, got a very light punishment, not too bad. And the second fellow, for the same thing, got a much worse punishment. And all the people in the courtroom, everyone in the courthouse all around asked, what's going on here? Why is this happening? Why is that fair? And the judge explained, you know why? Because this first fellow, I told you, I recognize his father. His father's a thief. His grandfather's a thief. He comes from a family of thieves. You're right, he didn't do the right thing and he acted incorrectly. But what do you expect from him? He grew up in this environment. I don't expect much more from him. So we're not going to punish him so too harshly. But this other fellow, his father, one of the most prestigious people out there. He's a great rabbi, he's a great professor, whatever it is. Him, and he grew up the right way. And he came down to doing this terrible behavior. We're going to have to punish him. Because that's not how he grew up. And it's not expected of him. And at that time, all the people in the courthouse are like, you know what? And we know his grandfather too. You know who his grandfather was? Not only was his father great, his grandfather was such an aristocrat, an amazing person. And his great-grandfather, I recognized him, said an old man in the crowd. He was an incredible fellow. He was such a powerful, honorable person. And the judge, you know what? You should punish him even more. Says the Dubna Maggid, that's what's happening. For us, the Jewish people, it's actually part of the Tochacha, this pasuk. It's not a consolation. It's part of the punishment. Everything bad is going to happen. And not only that, you, the Jewish people, you come from good stock. Your great-grandfather was Yaakov Avinu, the patriarch Yaakov. Amazing. You know who your grandfather was? You know who you come from? And not only that, his father, go up even more, Yitzchak, and his father, Avram. And you're still able to behave like this? The punishment is going to have to be much worse now. And it's all part of the Tochacha. And I'll remember the land also, the pasuk says. And the pasuk says the land will leave them, etc., etc. So it's all part of it. So the lesson here we have to remember is, where do we come from? We're people of such good stock. We're children of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Don't think they're so far removed from us. The Tochacha is telling us, hey, the reason why we're going to get punished is because we're such great people. We have such great lineage. We're from Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And it's an amazing thing. It's something to keep in mind for Sfira as well. We had in last week's Parasha and Emor, the mitzvah of Sfira says, "Usfartem lochem mimachar Hashem." You should count for yourself. Says the Or HaChaim. The Or HaChaim says in one of his explanations, he says, you know what Usfartem is similar to? Sfira counting. It's also similar to the word sapir. Sapir, sapphire. Every one of us, every Jew, he said our neshama is like from the luchos, is a portion of the luchos. Really. The luchos are made of sapphire. We each have our neshama is hewn from the Kisei HaKavod, Hashem's holy throne. We're really special. And what we're supposed to be doing during Sfira, Sfartem Lochem, is shining ourselves to reveal that shine of the sapphire. Sapir, that's our Sfartem Lochem. Every single person has this job. We have to remember, not only do we come from tremendous patriarchs like Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, we come from great stock, but we ourselves, we're sapphires. Our neshamas come from the Kisei HaKavod, from Hashem. We have a job to do during Sfira. We have to prepare for Matan Torah. Nothing comes without good preparation. So we have our work cut out for us. We have a lesson we started out with from Parasha's Behar-Bechukotai, connecting with Hashem. And not only does it have benefits in the next world, it has benefits in this world. Our lives will be calm and tranquil. Realize, do what we have to do. Of course, we have to work and we can't be lazy. We have to do our job, but realize everything's from Hashem. We have to remember this lesson of Bitachon. And in Bechukotai, also in the Tochacha, we have to remember who our patriarchs are. How should we behave? We're aristocrats now. When we walk around in the street, when we do our daily things, we have to realize, wait a second, we're children of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. We should question ourselves. Should I be behaving like this? And we have to realize that not just our forefathers, but we ourselves as well, our neshamas, our sapphire, we come from the luchos, we come from the kisei hakavod. And hopefully we'll work on ourselves, we'll shine that sapphire, we'll all bring out the best in ourselves and in others as we prepare for Matan Torah and for receiving the Torah. And wishing all of you a wonderful Shabbos, a wonderful rest of the Sfira, and all the best.
Thank you, Rabbi Meissner. I want to ask you a quick question about the first idea that you said about the bitachon idea. So I saw a very similar idea in Rav Chaim Shmulevitz in the Sichas Musar, as almost the Medrash Rabbin Vayikra with the farmers and Nasa V'Nishma, Ma'inin Shmita al Tzar Sinai. He puts it all together very similar way. And I was sharing this in a class I was teaching today, and someone asked the question that we find all these sources about how the grit that these farmers had to have to be able to just sit there and tough it out. And the question was, I don't understand, if there's a promise that they're going to get a triple crop on the 6th year, so then their food is in the bank. You know what I mean? They've got it already. So why exactly are we going giving such amazing praises to these farmers for keeping the Shemitah and for letting people just walk into their fields and eat everything? They've got a silo full of grain, 3 years worth of grain. What's the big deal? They're on vacation. That was, well, I want to know if you have an approach to this, Rabbi Meissner.
Interesting. Well, when the grain's already in the silo, when's the grain growing? They're planting it in the 6th. Maybe it'll grow in the 7th. Did it grow yet?
Interesting. I was always under the assumption that this bracha of 3 years was that the 6th year produced a triple crop. That it was three years worth of food in 1 year.
When is the production?
Meaning the production of the 6th year.
Is in the 6th year or in the 7th?
I understood it was in the 6th, but
That could be. That is a very interesting question. That is an interesting question. Also thinking for down the future and throughout the generations, we have those stories that we know just in the past 100 years of this Moshav Komamius that kept Shemitah and all the miraculous things that happened, where
Right.
it didn't necessarily grow 3 years worth of crop. Hashem took care of them.
Right. Yeah. So that's a different.
They had to make, I mean, like you can also, I guess, say like Nasa v'Nishma. Once they heard this commandment and realized, whoa, what's ahead of us? And if the Jewish people who made that commitment to do it, even though the crop grew before then, they get that reward. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's the irony that today that we don't have this great bracha for whatever reason, that could be a shirin of its own, but the bitachon is all that is in a certain sense perhaps greater for modern day farmers who have to observe the Shemitah.
For sure.
Anyways, okay. Well, Yishakayach, Rabbi Meissner, thank you very much for offering the shir, especially even while you are off in Detroit for it's your brother-in-law. What'd you say?
Brother-in-law, my wife's brother.
Brother-in-law, beautiful for his
Thank you.
and mazel tov, many more simchas for the family. Thank you everybody for joining, and I wish you all a wonderful Shabbos.
I mean, thank you for the opportunity.
thank you to you too.
All right, have a good Shabbos, Myron.
Yes, we will. I'm looking forward to making challah tomorrow and having a